The honeymoon can only last so long.
They're in their honeymoon period.
Surely this honeymoon can't last.
It is still a honeymoon period, but it's a heck of a honeymoon.
The Albanese honeymoon, is it over already?
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. It's now 11 weeks since Anthony Albanese came to power and his political honeymoon began. And all the way the media have been saying it must soon be over. 4 weeks ago, the Sydney Morning Herald was telling us confidently,
the Albanese government's honeymoon has been one of the sweetest in political memory, but could also be one of the shortest.
And a week later, 9 News was asking if the end had come.
Chris, is Anthony Albanese's honeymoon over?
Not quite, Mark.
But that was not quite what O'Keefe had said just 1 week earlier.
Decked out in a traditional Indonesian shirt, the new Prime Minister's honeymoon could be all but over.
These honeymoon forecasts are a bit like the weather, subject to daily revision. On day 9 of the PM's term of office, Chris Smith was telling Nine's Today Show,
reality is biting that the honeymoon is really over because he is now in the A-League, Anthony Albanese.
only to be telling viewers on Sky 1 month later,
6 weeks in, and the honeymoon continues for the new Australian Prime Minister.
and then backflipping again some 2 weeks after that, ahead of the opening of Parliament, to say,
Now, this must surely signify the end of Anthony Albanese's honeymoon.
we're still waiting for his next contortion. The Today Show hosts are also unsure if Albo's coming or going. Back in June, when the PM refused to fund extra staff for independent MPs, the programme told us,
the honeymoon is over. Anthony Albanese's big plans at risk.
But last week came this shock news.
The new PM is enjoying his political honeymoon. 61% of Australians satisfied with Anthony Albanese's performance.
And the Today Show was forced into a quick reverse ferret.
Welcome news for the PM this Monday. Anthony Albanese recording the highest satisfaction rating for an incoming leader. But how long will this honeymoon last?
Good question. But an hour or so later, Today Extra was marvelling at how long the PM's Arcadian interval had endured.
It is still a honeymoon period, but it's a heck of a honeymoon.
So, how to explain it? We'll leave that to the real political expert from Mad as Hell.
So in terms of political honeymoons, Mr Albanese's having a lot of great sex, while Mr Dutton is going through a bitter divorce and looks like being celibate for some time.
But now to Nine's weekend magazine Sunday Life that comes with the Sunday Age and Sun Herald, which told us recently about a wonderful new drink.
Better than tap? The science behind structured water.
That sounds fascinating. I can't wait to hear more.
We're all familiar with water's 3 phases: liquid, ice and vapour. But some experts are talking about a 4th phase. The new kid on the block, they say, is structured water.
And what exactly is that? Well, it's also known as hexagonal or exclusion zone water.
Advocates of structured water say it has a hexagonal crystalline structure, unlike regular water, which has a 5-sided or pentagonal shape.
And as Sunday Life told us, that makes it much better than ordinary water in so many ways. Now, if that sounds to you like a load of old nonsense, I would have to agree. But if it's in the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, surely there is some solid science behind it. Not according to UNSW water engineer Stuart Kahn, who tweeted,
if you can't spot that this is pure snake oil from a kilometre away, you should not be in the business of reporting, let alone science reporting.
And in the conversation, Kahn's colleague at UNSW, Timothy Schmidt, also had a crack.
As a professor of chemistry, I can tell you exclusion zone water is nonsense. Put simply, it is not possible to buy any other type of water than regular water.
And Jackson Ryan, science editor at the US tech website CNET, was also outraged, taking to his blog No Breakthroughs to lament,
every now and again you come across a piece of science reporting so wild that even calling it science reporting is an affront to every hard-working scientist, communicator and journalist today. This is one of those times.
So who in Sunday Life was spruiking this new magic water? Step forward Rob Gourlay, billed in the story as
an expert in biological research and water structure science,
who told readers,
there are so many health benefits of drinking structured water, including improved hydration and uptake of minerals, increased oxygen, reduced inflammation and elimination of foreign or toxic pollutants.
So, is Gourlay a well-known water expert? Well, yes, of sorts. He is a Master of Applied Sciences who has been researching water for years. And he's also a water diviner, here with the copper rods, who was awarded the New South Wales Dowser of the Year in 2020. And he also owns a company that sells, wait for it, MEA, or magnetic energised activated water, which comes at a bargain $455 for 2 bottles with a golden top. Although, to be fair, the gold top can turn any amount of tap water into you-know-what. And what about the story's author, Joanna Webber? Her CV shows she's been a content provider to women's magazines for clients like Weight Watchers, Coles and Westfield. But she's now doing PR for Gourlay's company, Fion, which sells MEA water. Yet somehow neither Gourlay nor Webber, nor The Age or Herald, told us about this blatant conflict of interest. So, how on earth did these once admired papers let this happen? Nine told us in a statement,
"We have removed the article from online and there is an investigation underway. We are taking this matter extremely seriously."
And so it should, because Nine has breached its own reporting guidelines, which state,
"We will examine and disclose conflicts of interest where relevant."
As for Rob Gourlay, he says it is unfortunate Nine has removed the article, and he remains a real believer, calling critics of structured water
crackpot skeptics, chemists and mainly public scientists who are captive of their peer review beliefs. If MSM keeps sweeping new and relevant science under the carpet, then you are squashing innovation in industry.
Meanwhile, Joanna Webber told us she did not tell Sunday Life she does PR for Fion because she wasn't plugging the company and thought the story was of genuine interest to readers. She says she did not intend to mislead. But now, to what's being claimed as a breakthrough in the mystery of how the COVID pandemic began. Spruiked on Twitter by world-leading virologist Dr. Angela Rasmussen.
Where did the pandemic begin? Was it from nature or a lab? Since the start, this fundamental question has gone unanswered until now.
Last month, 2 studies published in Science magazine after 5 months of peer review identified the wild animal trade at the Wuhan wet market as ground zero for the COVID outbreak. And with varying degrees of caution, the world's media duly spread the news.
COVID origin studies say evidence points to Wuhan market.
So, has the mystery of COVID's origin finally been solved? The study's lead authors believe it has. Professor Edward Holmes from the University of Sydney told the Nine papers, the siren has definitely sounded on the lab leak theory. Professor David Robertson from the University of Glasgow told the BBC he hoped the new evidence would correct the false record that the virus came from a lab. And Professor Christian Anderson from Scripps Research, who initially feared COVID did escape from a lab, assessed the results like this.
Have we disproven the lab leak theory? No, we have not. Will we ever be able to? No. But there are possible scenarios and there are plausible scenarios. Possible does not mean equally likely.
And these expert opinions were backed up by several independent virologists, like the University of Minnesota's Matthew Aliotta, who told Associated Press that the study
kind of puts to rest, hopefully, the lab leak hypothesis. This is maybe as close to a smoking gun as you could get.
Now, as a reporter, you'd probably think all that is worth noting. So, I shared an ABC report on the story on Twitter and commented, another blow to the Wuhan lab escape theory. And that sent the science experts at Sky News into a frenzy, with Jack Houghton and the Australian Sophie Ellsworth accusing me wildly of being a closet communist.
All Barry is doing is spreading their propaganda on behalf of the Chinese communist superpower.
The fact that he's almost siding with China on this is concerning.
Strange.
So, what did the 2 studies from more than a dozen international virologists actually reveal? First, that in a city of almost 8,000 square kilometres, almost all the early cases were close to Wuhan's wet market.
We found that whether those cases were associated with the market or not, whether they'd been to the market or not, they really clustered around the market and formed almost a circle around the market where the market was in the dead centre.
The second revelation was that traces of the virus found in the Wuhan market were overwhelmingly in areas where wild animals were sold.
That really strongly indicates that those samples, those environmental samples, may have come from the animals. And on top of that, those samples were often collected from things associated with animals, such as cages, hair and feather removal devices, and carts.
And third, it was revealed that 2 different strains of the virus were circulating in the market. And as Dr. Rasmussen and Professor Mike Worobi, who was initially open to the lab leak theory, explained in Toronto's Globe and Mail, it was implausible that both strains could have escaped from a lab 14 kilometres away and ended up in the same place.
For this to begin as a laboratory accident, one person would have to be infected with lineage B and then immediately go to the Huanan market. Then another person would have to be independently infected with lineage A a week later and also immediately go to Huanan market, each leaving no trace at the laboratory or any other location in a city of 11 million people.
Werrobie and Rasmussen concluded their op-ed by saying,
the likelihood of SARS-CoV-2 originating anywhere other than the Huanan market is vanishingly slim. Anyone who tells you otherwise either doesn't understand the science or doesn't want you to understand it.
Now, as you may know, journalist Sharri Markson and News Corp have vigorously promoted the theory that COVID-19 likely leaked from a lab at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And Markson has pursued it in a book and a Sky News documentary which has had 12 million YouTube views, entitled What Really Happened in Wuhan, in which former US intelligence director John Radcliffe told viewers a lab leak was
more than just a possibility, it's certainly a probability, and it's probably a certainty.
And as Markson told her Sky colleagues last September,
the more I looked into it, it became very clear that this is very possibly where the virus started, in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. There was so much evidence. And then the more I kept digging into it, the story just started unravelling and the cover-ups were extraordinary.
So, what has been Markson's response to these latest studies? Back in March, when they were first issued as preprints, she made no public comment, and she's now away on maternity leave. But we did hear back from Chris Dorr, editor-in-chief of The Australian, who told us,
Shari's a journalist. Why would she respond to the findings? Shari's reporting has never professed to know the source of the virus. That's the point. Some other journalists and Media Watch seem to have all the answers. What a bunch of weirdos you lot are.
And last week on Sky, Markson's colleagues lined up to defend her and shoot the messenger.
Sophie, Paul Barry appears to have had it in for Sharri Markson's great reporting from the very beginning. My only guess as to what he's doing is that Donald Trump was for it and he doesn't like Donald Trump to the degree. What do you think's going on here?
Well, firstly, he's on a crusade, as you said, to basically dismiss any reporting that Shari's done on this topic, and she's done incredible reporting on this. He's been on a crusade to diminish her. It's got the Trump factor as well. We know he can't stand Trump.
Sky's Jack Houghton dismissed the two new studies out of hand, saying they were based on Chinese data, which can't be trusted, and proved nothing anyway. And he accused Media Watch of being anti-science. Meanwhile, the News Corp tabloids, which ran so hard with Markson's lab leak reporting, have given scant coverage to the latest news. So, does that mean the matter is now settled and the debate ended? Not at all. Some prominent scientists still hold to the lab leak theory, and the question may never be settled because the Chinese won't let investigators into the Wuhan lab, and finding the animals that may have given us all COVID will be almost impossible. As Werrobie and Rasmussen observe in their op-ed,
the evidence is always incomplete, messy and difficult to access. Ebola virus emerged in 1976 and we still have not identified the exact species of bat responsible.
In other words, this may be the closest to finding the origins of COVID that science is going to get. And finally, to the price of spreading fake news. And you'll be delighted to know it's high.
A Texas jury has ordered conspiracy theorist Alex Jones to pay $45.2 million in punitive damages to the parents of a first grader killed in the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre. That's in addition to $4.1 million in compensatory damages. The right-wing radio host falsely claimed the 2012 mass shooting that killed 20 children and 6 adults was a hoax.
Alex Jones, bombastic host of InfoWars, claimed for years that the Sandy Hook shooting was a hoax staged by gun control activists and that the 20 kids who died were actors. Last week, he came face-to-face with the parents of one of the dead, a 6-year-old boy, Jesse Lewis, and they told him of the harassment, death threats and trauma that his ridiculous lies had caused them for the last 10 years.
Jesse was real. I am a real mom. There's records of Jesse's birth.
I did hold my son with a bullet hole in his head. Many other people saw Jesse with a bullet hole in his head. It was an open casket.
Jesse Lewis's parents are among 10 families who have won defamation verdicts against Jones in 4 separate actions. But last week's hearing was the first to reach the damages stage. And to illustrate the living hell that Jones put parents through, the court was played some of his lies.
It took me about a year with Sandy Hook to come to grips with the fact that the whole thing was fake. And I did deep research, and my gosh, it just pretty much didn't happen. I knew they had actors there, clearly, but I thought they killed some real kids. And it just shows how bold they are that they clearly used actors.
It really is disgraceful stuff. And what did Jones say after being confronted with these lies? Well, he offered up a stunning admission.
It was, especially since I met the parents, and it's 100% real.
So, not a giant hoax at all, but nonetheless very profitable to Jones and his InfoWars brand, as one of the parents' attorneys told the court.
The day Sandy Hook happened, Alex Jones planted a seed of misinformation that lasted a decade, and he just watered that seed over and over until it bore fruit, cruelty and money.
So, how profitable were Jones's lies? Evidence presented in court suggests very. Back in 2018, InfoWars had earned
$800,000 gross in selling its products in a single day, which would amount to nearly $300 million in a year.
Amazing, eh? A lot of it from Jones directing his followers to buy merchandise from his online store. But whether the families of Sandy Hook get to see any of that money is another question. During the trial, Alex Jones was busy claiming he's broke. And last month, his company, Free Speech Systems, filed for bankruptcy. The court's next job will be to resolve that issue, as more Sandy Hook families pursue Jones in separate hearings. But for now, there's at least some justice for Jesse Lewis, with his parents' lawyer Mark Bankston saying they are
thrilled with the result and look forward to putting Mr. Jones's money to good use. It is clear that Mr. Jones's time on the American stage is finally coming to an end.
Well, here is hoping. But no doubt there will be someone to take his place. Because what this case shows, yet again, is that pushing lies and fake news online is a profitable business, and the audience is always there. That's all from us for tonight. There's more on our website, including statements from Robert Gourlay, Joanna Webber and 9 Newspapers, and from Chris Dorr, The Australian. And don't forget Media Bites every Thursday. But for now, until next week, goodbye.